evening. Welcome to Community and Technology, where we connect the global community with news, information, and resources that we hope will help improve your life. I'm Stu Reid. Here's my co-host, Dave Burstein. Dave, we got a special guest today.
And where do we have her from? Alianna, where are you?
I am physically from, right now, the island of Kauai, which is the westmost island in the Hawaii island chain. So I'm on the Japan side of that island chain.
Wow. So Dave, why don't you tell us a little bit about Alianna?
Alianna has been doing artificial intelligence for 25 years. She's a professor, and we agreed before we came on the air not to discuss Gaussian splatting and thermodynamics. But she does a lot of work in things like that. In fact, she's has the sense that that kind of stuff will change how artificial intelligence works. But we're going to keep to things that are maybe a little bit easier to do in the radio. Alianna, what did you suggest we talk about?
Let's talk first about generative artificial intelligence and then move from there to the next generation after that, which is, if you know that saying or that sign that you see in your rear view mirror, objects in the rear view mirror are closer than they seem. Well, artificial general intelligence is closer than it seems. It's not going to be that many years.
That's one of the big things that everybody in AI is arguing about. Some people think it's going to happen in 3 years. A brilliant guy who's now working for Google thinks it's going to happen in 6 years. Sam Altman, who's the head of OpenAI, has been hedging on that. And in fact, he's trying to change the definition of artificial general intelligence. And I just had a back and forth with, I'm forgetting his name, who thinks it's going to be far longer than any of them think. But what are they shooting for? What do they want?
We've already got ideas in our psyche about what an AGI looks like and feels like. And it started when we were kids. Actually, it would have started when the parents of some of our listeners today would have been kids with the first Star Wars movie. And with C-3PO and R2-D2, we had our first friendly instances of AGIs, which kind of offset the HAL 2000. And then for folks right now who are watching Beacon 23, which is a TV show that's been launched just in the past month or so, very popular, we see two AI characters that are really just spin-offs of our R2-D2 and C-3PO. There's a beautiful young Black woman who is a holographic projection, and she introduces herself as the personal AI for one of the protagonists. And then there's something that's like a R2-D2 head that's sort of split in the center and flipped upside down. So it's a little flying saucer kind of thing. And it has similar twerps and trills. And that's another AI. But the reality is going to be different.
Well, did you see the keynote yesterday?
You darn right I did. And thank you for turning me on to that. That was mind-blowing. But Jensen, brilliant though he is, and fantastic though NVIDIA is doing, I mean, absolutely gobsmacking, mind-blowing. Oh my God, this is real. This is real. And truly, I would say the field of AI changed yesterday with that emergence. But Jensen still missed a few things.
And what keynote is that, guys? What are you talking about?
That's what I was about to say.
Okay.
This is Jensen Huang, who's the I don't know if he's actually the founder, but for 25 years, he's run NVIDIA, which makes graphic chips that turned out to be the one and only way you could really do AI models efficiently. And everything you've heard of in AI has been done on his chips. And NVIDIA is having a big event. You can go to NVIDIA and log on. They got 2 more days worth of speakers. They have 100 speakers. But Jensen yesterday did a 2-hour keynote where he talked a lot about the future. But the most exciting thing, what did he bring? Who did he bring out at the end?
Oh, it was those two little robot characters. They were so sweet.
R2D2 came to the stage. Jensen talked to it, told it how to move around the stage, and it did. It didn't look exactly like R2D2, and there was no person inside. It was one of the very smart robots that NVIDIA expects to be making soon. And that kind of stuff doesn't work very well now, autonomous robots. But Jim Fan, who's also at NVIDIA, thinks that it's going to explode in 3 or 4 years. Do you think robotics is going to explode and we can have, well, maybe not the Jetsons, but a pretty powerful robot in most places?
Increasingly, yes. And it's not going to be in all at once. It's going to be incremental stages. Like right now, people that want to have a little robot vacuum cleaner. And we're seeing in the laboratory proof of concepts of robots doing very delicate, very complex movements like handling eggs, stacking dishes. So yeah, more and more household robotics, more and more factory robotics, more and more not just self-driving automobiles, but self-driving platoons of trucks, all sorts of ways in which autonomous aid capabilities that are in physical things, not just on the computer, but in physical things, are going to be present in our lives.
And when did you first think that robots were close? We've been around for a long time.
Long time ago. But having a sense that their presence in our lives on a really it's no big deal, that's just the robot basis, like, oh yeah, there's one. Increasingly over this last year, and absolutely mind-blowing, fabulous with Jensen's talk yesterday. It's like that's closer than we thought.
What was Jensen talking about? Give me a sense of, and our audience a sense of,
Here,
what the conversation was.
Let me do that because I've been writing it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody in artificial intelligence is using chips made by Jensen Huang and NVIDIA, a $2 trillion company now, based in California. He's from Taiwan. They have very close ties to China. In fact, they were translating some of the sessions into Chinese. And they make excellent chips. They were the first to go big into AI. He bet the company on it about 8 years ago. And he delivered his first really high-powered AI computer by hand to OpenAI, and it built their first models. So he was telling all these anecdotes, but he was saying much more. He was saying, first of all, that forget about programming the way you used to program. That everything you know about programming is now out of date because artificial intelligence does it differently, and for most jobs, does it better. That's his belief. Nobody has proved that. We know that artificial intelligence can do some dramatic things. He also said, oh, yes, and our supercomputers, he's building real supercomputers, are going to run the world. He didn't use those words, but basically he was saying that everything in the world was going to be, including the robots in your home, in the Amazon warehouse, and probably in the Pentagon, is going to be connected to supercomputers, most of which will be in the cloud, many of which will be built by his company, although there are a lot of other people who want to build it, and some of which will probably be inside the Pentagon for security reasons. And he took 2 hours and he showed the whole system of how he thinks the future would work. You can go to nvidia.com. I believe the keynote from yesterday is posted there. I didn't want to listen to it. I had a lot of work, but I couldn't stop listening because it was so exciting. But
Yeah.
it's not all going to be true the way he says. And he knows that. He's one of the
Yeah.
people who can say, I don't know, or I made a mistake. Unlike most of the people in this business who are sure they never make mistakes, otherwise known as Sam Altman. Alianna, what did you take away from yesterday?
Well, first of all, for the benefit of our listeners who want to see the whole talk, yes, you can go to the new NVIDIA website, but also go to YouTube and type in Jensen Huang's name, or even just NVIDIA, NVIDIA keynote, and you'll get that whole 2-hour talk on replay on YouTube. It was playing live on YouTube, and it's available for anybody to see the whole thing again. So I know I'm going to listen or watch it at least a couple of times more. And so here's the thing. Here's the big thing. If you happened to catch the Microsoft Copilot Super Bowl commercial, where they had a 1-minute spot, and it was all the warm and fuzzy. It was about how Copilot was going to make people able to achieve their dreams. That was very human-centric. Jensen Huang, who makes chips for a living, and all of his people do, it was chip-centric. It was exciting. It was shiny. It was fast-paced. It wasn't about the warm and fuzzy, except for a little bit of, robotness at the end. But it was all, oh, gee whiz, look at what we can do with these big new supercomputers. But they're both right. More and more, we're going to see ourselves like our kids. We're going to have a co-pilot as we start through school, as we go into our next jobs. We're going to have co-pilots with us for all sorts of reasons, the way that we now use Microsoft Word to write any kind of document. And we're also going to be interacting with more and more AIs, and those AIs will do a lot of processing via the supercomputer warehouses that Jensen Huang and his colleagues at NVIDIA are making.
What is a co-pilot, Alianna, for our listeners? What is it?
Good one. Glad you brought that up. Copilot is Microsoft's latest release. They're tremendously excited, as in totally all in. Everything about the company right now is about Copilot. And it's an AI assistant, kind of like a chat GPT or a large language model, but really they're just trying to help people with their tasks. So you can sign up for Copilot on a monthly fee. I think it's about $20 a month. And they're really pushing it right now, mostly to companies.
It's a way to get ChatGPT and ChatGPT's image stuff, Dolly, into your computer really easily, because they own 49% of ChatGPT. The Europeans are thinking of doing something about that, because some people don't think 5 American companies should own the world, or at least the internet. But that's a whole nother discussion. But yeah, because I just mentioned a product, and let me tell you what I use. I started out, because I do a lot of things. Jenny did a legal document. It was routine. Her lawyer told her what to say, but she didn't know the forms for the state of Colorado, where her late father's probate is going on. So she took the instructions from the lawyer, said, make me a petition to the probate court in Colorado, and it did it. It was fine. In fact, she did it on Anthropic. I also did it on OpenAI, ChatGPT. They both were right on target. What have you used personally, Alianna?
Mostly, to be really honest, I stay away from all of them. and this is why I've had some limited play with them. Mostly I look over the shoulders of people who are playing with him and reporting like, oh my God, I had this horrific result. And because my work is so theoretical, it involves equations that nobody else is playing with. I can't get any help out of ChatGPT.
Well, I can take that somewhere. And let me do it for a moment just to give you a sense of how this is going. And then we got to bring Stu in.
Oh, absolutely.
One of the big breakthroughs that was demonstrated with ChatGPT 3 was that you train a large language model now on 70 billion words of the internet, almost the whole internet. And that gives you a lot of information. If you want to tell a cat from a dog, which is the classic example, you show the computer 1,000 pictures of cats and 1,000 pictures of dogs, and they figure out what's the difference. But I'm not going to try to explain it because I don't necessarily understand it. But as this got big enough, and as there was enough information in it, and you can see this in ChatGPT, you can throw at it stuff that it has never seen before, and usually it gets it right. Now, does that mean it's reasoning and thinking? I'll let the philosophers argue that one out. But that's the kind of power that we're looking at. Stu, what do you work with yourself? Is it changing your life?
Not yet. I haven't had any direct experience other than, talking on the show about it. That's been my most immersive experience. So I haven't really used it, Dave. But I wanted to ask Alianna, how does she think that AI is going to impact everyday people? I know you talked about, making routine tasks easier. You talked about automating certain things in the workplace. You talked about maybe creating and writing documents much easier. But I have the sense that you have some further insights into how this stuff, 5, 10 years from now, how is it going to really be integrated into our lives, into everyday folks' lives?
Thank you, Stu. Perfect question. I'm loving a chance to answer that. So, you know that we all have different, what we'll call learning styles. Like I was gifted with an ability to think abstractly. I love equations. I mean, I go to bed at night meditating on equations, and I get up and I go for a walk and I think equations.
Wow.
And that does not make a girl the most dateable girl in the room.
I can think of several friends of mine who would be perfect for you. One of them dreams in assembly language.
You can introduce us. We'll have the strangest, oddest, most heartwarming conversations.
I think he changed his name to a feminine one. Oops. And I'm not sure what he's into these days. But people are doing that more and more.
Yes.
Yeah. So never had any idea that was who he was. I knew him years ago. And we talked about computers. I didn't know his life.
My goodness. So here's the thing. Not everybody thinks in terms of equations. Most people are really tangible. We're hands-on. We're specific. We want to see it, touch it, sometimes taste it. We like tangibleness in our life. And suppose that we have a child. Suppose a child is like 10 years old and going to school. And he's sitting in the classroom and the teacher is explaining whatever they teach to 10-year-olds, which is, for example, it's multiplication tables, okay? Or maybe it's even simple fractions. And suppose that kid does not think in terms of equations. And maybe they could get it. You show them enough pictures, you let them play, for example, with some physical things. And like if it's going to be 2 times 4, put down 2 sets of 4 and they count it up and say, okay, I get 8. And going through enough tangible experience, they get it. Now, right now, and I've taught math in college classes. So one of the most wonderful things about teaching math to students was I realized, oh my God, this is not easy for most people. And it's way too fast for most people because we're asking them to be very abstract, and people don't like to be that abstract that fast. So what we can do with computer technologies that are emerging with AI is we each get our individual, let's call it a co-pilot, our each individual fine-tuned assistant who can help us with all sorts of problems. I'm just picking one, like how do we learn math? And it learns how we learn, and it can coach us. And instead of being this frustration feeling, it's like, oh, okay, I get this. Now I can take on the next itsy bitsy little tiny thing without being rushed, without having to keep pace with everybody else, without having to use the same examples, which, you know, one person might want a cooking example, another person might like a construction example. So examples that make sense. So that's going to be one of the big changes, is that we're going to be able to break out of trying to force everybody to be the same and then measure them on this performance of, are you the same as everybody else? And more into what makes you learn the easiest and the most fun. Emphasis on fun.
That's fascinating. How does AI learn how you learn?
Okay, you know what? People have been working on this problem, like how can we help people learn individually for at least 20 years. And I'm talking AI systems. They're just getting better at it now. And we can do that by observing where people make mistakes and knowing something about different kinds of people's psychologies and how people think. So it's a combination of things. But the beauty is that when we talk about a co-pilot, not necessarily Microsoft, but a personal assistant, a AI personal assistant that every single one of us is going to have. And it'll tune in to our specific interests because it will, like a chat GPT, have access to that huge body of knowledge. So our personal assistant, imagine that we have several of them and we just sort of dial in the particular avatar that we want. Sometimes it's, I need help with my homework. Sometimes, hey, I need coaching with my soccer game. Sometimes it's, I've got a problem with my girlfriend. You know,
Wait,
all
let's
these
stop
things.
there because people can relate to that. How much emotion can a computer express? How much can it understand people's emotions to give you advice about a girlfriend? And then the other question is, what's it like to have a girlfriend who's a computer, which is
I
now
knew.
becoming quite popular.
So let me jump in on that last part. Fairly recently, like within the last year, and I'm not going to name a specific name here for all kinds of good reasons, but a very famous tech leader was getting a divorce. And this tech leader, who was very, very wealthy, was interacting with an app on his phone. And it was an app to be sort of therapeutic support. And he was saying, I'm lonely. Well, the scuttlebutt was that this guy had cheated on his wife. His wife waited until the youngest child was 18 and then filed for divorce. And yeah, he was lonely. We all get that, you know. A life lesson there for all of us. But there he is. He's trying to dial into an app. And you know what? Computers are going to get smarter and smarter and smarter about faking how humans respond emotionally. We can teach that. They're already sort of there and they're going to get better. But let me give you a contrary example. I studied with a couple of teachers, and because I've been way in the back room doing research for the past 10 years, I've really lost social skills. It it may not seem that way right now, talking with you two gentlemen, but there are times that I just don't know how to read people very well. So I've signed up to study with a woman. She's a melanated woman, very beautiful, extremely good with social communications. And she has YouTubes, and her Once she got this generative AI program that could put out people just by a verbal description of what you wanted, she changed her thumbnails to be AI generated. And her thumbnails are typically a beautiful Black woman. And sometimes, if she's reaching the wider audience, a beautiful Black woman, a beautiful Irish looking girl, fair skin, red hair, a beautiful blonde or brunette, all of them beautiful, all of them like Barbie dolls. Perfect, slender figures, but a little bit, shall we say, curvaceous up on top. Perfect plasticky skin. They never have a bad hair day. And you can easily generate these artificial persona. Similarly, when it comes to AI girlfriends, we can start generating artificial persona. But it's going to be like interacting with a Barbie. Barbie never has a bad hair day. And where it's important for our lives is when it's gritty. Like you're calling up your girlfriend and you say, honey, I just want to talk. I've had, I'm feeling a little off. This has been going on. And your girlfriend says, honey, I so wish, but I've just been having a horrible day. My mom just got told by her doctor she's got to get surgery. My boss was having a crappy day and she took it out on me. My kid brother got punched on the school playground. And all of a sudden, your hero rises to the fore and you say, hang on, baby, I got it. I'm going to go take your brother, take him out for, a hamburger and chill him out. Listen to him. I'll be with you whenever you've got to take your mom to the hospital. Your hero stands up for that occasion and takes care of everybody. But if you have an AI girlfriend, is your hero ever going to be asked to rise to the challenge?
Wow.
Yeah.
Hang on, Dave. Let's get back to that question. We have to take a break. That's fascinating what you're talking about, Alianna. We're speaking with Alianna Maren, who is an expert on AI and a theoretical mathematician and professor. And of course, Dave Burstein and Stu Reid. This is Community and Technology on WHCR 90.3 FM. We're going to take a brief break and be right back. Stay tuned.
promenading and high hopes was fading, that dreams ever really come true. When up jumped springtime, I got a look at you. All at once it was heady, a gaze long and steady, made sounds of the patter grow dim, and up jumped springtime, and love came on in. Now my heart wants to cheer, life's sweet promise is here, and love is a lovely thing. And we're sweethearts together, like bird and the feather. Our love is as free as the wind. 'Cause up jump springtime, so hello, my friend. Now my heart wants to cheer life's sweet promises here, and love is a lovely thing. And we're sweethearts together, like bird and the feather. Our love is as free as the wind. 'Cause love jumped springtime, so hello, my friend.
Okay, we're back. Community and Technology, Dave Burstein and Stu Reid, special guest, Alianna Maren. We're talking about AI, and she's a specialist in, I guess it's generative AI. Dave, what's Miss Maren's specialty?
Complicated mathematics, trying to change the substance of how people do AI. She is a professor. She thinks in mathematics, and we're not going to try to bring that on the radio. Let's bring it to a question that'll work better on the radio. What is life going to be like when the computers are smarter than we are, which might be 3 years or might be 300 years?
Good question. Great way to kick off this second half of the show. Thank you so much, Dave. So once again, I'm Alianna Maren, and in addition to being on the faculty with Northwestern University in their Master of Science in Data Science program, where I've developed 3 of their key AI courses and teach all of them simultaneously, I'm also the founder of my own company called Themesis, Themesis, Themesis Inc. And the reason that I'm mentioning that is that we're going to start talking about artificial general intelligence, which is the exciting next thing after what's going on now, which is generative AI. So we're going to go from generative AI to AGI, 2 different things. And the reason I'm mentioning Themesis Inc., Themesis, is that you can go to YouTube and find our YouTube channel, and there are playlists. And I'll start talking about a few things where you'd say, if I only had a visual of that, I would feel so much better. And we've got YouTubes with lots and lots of visuals. So I'm going to ask your readers if they're so interested to check that out. And
spell it out for people. What's the name? How do you spell it?
Themesis, Themesis. Themesis.
And that's a 25-year experienced artificial intelligence researcher explaining the world to you.
Exactly. And having fun while doing it.
So I got to break down the difference. You're saying right now it's generative AI, and we're moving to general
to AGI, artificial general intelligence.
Okay, what's the difference?
Okay, AGI, still, it's what you see in the movies. if you remember back to R2D2 and C3PO, and then if you've had a chance to watch something like Beacon 23 and you see the two AIs there, which are really just sort of a slightly upgraded, not very much different, R2D2 and C3PO, hey, that's general intelligence, artificial general intelligence. Right now, though, if you're playing with chatbot or if you're using DALL-E to make an image, that's generative AI. So, quick example, generative AI, you know that when you sit down with your smartphone and you're typing a message to somebody and you say in text, see you, and then it gives you three options typically. It'd be something like tomorrow, later, soon, and you pick one of those, you just hit that button. And if you keep typing a message, it keeps giving you three choices and you keep just thumbing the choice that you want. That's real similar to what ChatGPT does.
Well, another way to put it is ChatGPT was originally designed to answer questions by finding an answer word by word. And
Yes.
it does that pretty darn well, except when it hallucinates. Do you have hallucinations?
So let's talk about these hallucinations, because what it's doing is probabilistically finding the next right thing. Let's imagine two scenarios. Suppose that you are an office manager and you have 6 assistants working for you. And each assistant is, every time you ask your assistants a question, each one goes and they look through all the emails and the letters that have come in all throughout the corporate history. And one of them looks through the most recent stuff. They look through the last day. And another one goes through everything since the company got founded. And the other 4 go through everything in between. And they each come to you with an answer. And it's all like, this is the closest next thing based on a keyword in what you just said. So your keyword might be quarterly reports, and they might say profit. Now, every time you ask a question, they go through all that stuff every single time for every single next word. But wouldn't it be simpler and easier and less prone to mistake if you just said quarterly reports, December 2023, and you just went to the file drawer or the right folder on your computer and you pulled up the quarterly report? You didn't have to go through all the email traffic, all the mail. You just found the right thing first time. And you just sent one person, they were done right away. Now that's the difference between generative AI, where we go through all the stuff again and again and again and again and again and again, versus when you type in, suppose you type in City College of New York into Google, and one of the things that you see, as well as their generative AI, is a knowledge graph on the right side of your screen, and it shows a beautiful picture of the campus, and it says, we were founded in a certain date, where it's located, all kinds of information, numbers of students. So there's 2 sources that are competing for your attention right now. One is Google's more than a dozen years putting together knowledge graphs, and that information pops up. It's like going to the right file folder and getting it all at once without having to search again and again and again. And the other is the generative AI answer, which tells you, oh, City College of New York was founded, etc.
Well, and it can answer questions that are not obvious, because you can throw at it things that are really a challenge, and 9 times out of 10, it'll give you a reasonable answer. I use it for research all day long.
Yeah. And it's that 1 out of 10, because it's looking for things that are probabilistically like. And if you have, if one of your assistants happens to find City College of New York, but it's in a document where it's talking about MIT at the same time, it might start talking about MIT's program to you, and you wouldn't know the difference unless you really went in there and fact checked.
It did it to me. I am not a documentary filmmaker in Los Angeles. There's one with a very similar name.
Exactly.
It got the book I wrote. Stu, come in here. Are you looking forward to having an AI that you can tell all your problems to?
No, not really. I'm not. No, I'm not looking for a counselor. But I am interested in how it can help me. One of the questions I had, Alianna, is, and Dave, you too. What do you think the interface will be? You're talking about the pilot and the AI being right there for you to help you with this, that, and the other. What's the interface going to be? I know we're going to move beyond the computer screen and the smartphone screen. Where do you see that going in terms of AI communicating with the person?
Alianna, come in first, and then I'll have something.
Okay. It's going to be a variety of means. A lot of us tend to interact right now with our computers and smartphones. Do we want and need the bother of generating holograms? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on the environment. Do you want to have it speak to us? Maybe, maybe not. At some point within our lifetime, okay, our lifetime, and I'm not going to give away my age, 39 forever, but our lifetime.
You don't look like Jack Benny.
We're going to have true brain computer interfaces, and there are all kinds of experiments, and they're getting better and better all the time. So the options will increase dramatically.
Mm-hmm. So you're talking about like implants in the brain where you're getting communications directly into your brain.
Absolutely. Going to happen.
That people are working on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But before that works just fine, there's probably going to be several big changes. I think I said it was here last October or November that the next Apple iPhone, which is going to come out in September, is going to have one heck of a language model built in. Well, the New York Times this morning says Apple and Google are discussing a deal to bring generative AI to iPhones. They only have a part of that right. Generative AI, doing most of the things we're talking about, can run today on our hacker's phone, iPhone, and it'll run really well in the fall when Apple does it.
Yeah.
That's the first thing, that it's going to be anywhere you want it to be. It could be on your refrigerator, but your phone or a little locket you can wear that just listens to you. That's the thing coming after that, according to a lot of people who've convinced me that most of us don't think by typing. We think like we're doing it now. We're talking.
Yes.
We're talking and we're listening. And some people who seem to really have this figured out says that's how you're going to work with the computer, and you can do it today. It does work today, and it is coming out of the laboratories, and a lot of people think that's the way everything's going to be in pretty soon.
Faster and faster, yes.
Yeah. Now, when you talk to the computer, how well does it understand what you're saying? Remarkably well. I'm now dictating to the computer most of what I want to write, and it usually doesn't make a mistake. For years, for 20 years, I've been playing with programs like that, but they never quite got it. Now it's working.
Exactly. And
now,
if I could just jump in a sec, Dave, you just hit on it. Like 2024 right now is the tipping point. And that's what we both got when we were watching Jensen Huang yesterday in his keynote talk for NVIDIA. It's like, this is the tipping point. It's starting to get very, very real. Things that we've been working on for 20 some odd years, now they're finally working.
And that's the dream. And many of those dreams are being realized. And many of them will not be realized. For example, what we just talked about, how computers are going to change education and let students learn at their own pace, and it's going to be very different. Well, a fellow named John Scully wrote a book, so I interviewed him on the radio back then. And that's what he said to me, that people don't understand education is going to be totally revolutionized by our computers. Our computers, he was the CEO of Apple at the time, and this was about 1995. And I hate to tell you that, but there hasn't been a revolution in schools that have made kids any smarter or learn any better in the 30 years since he said it was ready to go now. So there's every reason to be skeptical. There's every reason to say, prove it to me. But some of the miracles are starting to happen.
They're starting to happen now, and it will pick up in pace very fast. So the things that were sort of pipe dreams, like we could imagine this happening and it's sort of promised to happen, but it hasn't really happened yet, are all of a sudden going to start happening.
Give
Now,
us,
and
give
what
us
you
a couple
did
examples,
yesterday,
Alianna. Could you give our listeners a couple examples of what you're thinking about or trends?
Okay. We just talked about education, about having a kid
let me do
get
the
a
first
personal
one, because I
teacher.
got something dramatic.
You go ahead.
Okay? I could talk like this, and it could come out of your telephone in China, in Chinese, and in a voice that sounds like my voice.
Yes.
Computers now can fake your voice really well, and they can translate really well. And that's being demoed all over the place. It works. Samsung sort of has it on their phones. Apple will have it on their phones this year. It can translate and use your voice, and it could make a picture of your face with your mouth moving and your face having realistic expressions. I've seen all that in the demonstrations. That doesn't mean you can go out and buy it tomorrow, although some of that is actually out there. Alianna, what's one of your examples?
I've had students do fabulous projects every single quarter, and every time I'm blown away. Let me just give you one example that has the potential to change the world. Okay. One student is
AI
really
people talk like this a whole lot. They really think they're in the middle of changing the world, and they may be right.
maybe
Hey,
not,
go.
but try this one. Okay. This young person is obsessed with smart farming, and his final project, we call it a capstone project, was that he looked at how can I make an app on a phone to detect soybean diseases, so that ultimately a farmer walking down his field, or even it can be a robot trolling down the lines between the soybean plants, can take pictures of the soybean plant leaves and say, is this a healthy plant, or does the plant have a disease? If so, what's the disease? And there's a lot of applications like that.
That actually works today.
Yes.
Not necessarily walking. You may have to feed it a photograph you took. That I've seen working. It does work. It can identify a diseased plant and say the problem here is it didn't get enough water or too much water or whatever.
Or it needs a specific kind of treatment to deal with this specific kind of disease, and very focused. So you're not just blindly irrigating the whole field with chemicals, but doing a very focused treatment.
There is, well, I've used the example in the air a number of times. I needed an MRI. I fell and hit my head, had a concussion. And so I went to Sinai and had an MRI. In fact, I had two of them. And they were read by an artificial intelligence computer. Today in production. Now, they also had the radiologist read it. And I got the radiology report, which was like 2 pages. And at the bottom, it said, from the Mount Sinai computer, very simple, I agree. It had came to the same conclusion as a high-powered radiologist.
Yes.
It is probably, according to a Harvard professor, Harvard or MIT, I forget which, a woman who actually had breast cancer, was a professor, worked on computers to read mammograms. And at least in the paper she wrote, she said they were more accurate than a group of doctors. That isn't happening everywhere. But that's the kind of thing that is definitely possible and starting to happen. Now, can it tell a cat from a dog?
Depends on the cat, depends on the dog.
This is a classic example that actually 10 years ago convinced people that these new neural networks generated by AI really could do something. Because you were in this stuff. For 20 years, they were doing vision models, but they weren't very smart. And you had to really go through programming. What's the features of a cat? What's the features? How do you tell the difference? Generative AI, neural network, this one came out, this was AlexNet coming out of Toronto.
Precisely.
Was shown 1,000 pictures of a cat and 1,000 pictures of a dog, and then showed another picture. And it consistently could tell which was a cat and which was a dog. That's not really very impressive, unless you had spent 20 years in artificial intelligence trying to figure out how to solve that problem. It now is so good, it really can take a picture of a leaf in the field, identify which plant it is, and identify with pretty good accuracy, does it have a disease, and if so, what's? These are practical things that I've seen in those. Education would be a little bit harder. Khan Academy, which has some great educational videos, is actually working with OpenAI. I haven't looked at their stuff, but they're working on that kind of thing. And let's hope they get it all, because it would be darn good. But cats, dogs, what did I say? Tell us about Jan LeCun, who I'm about to quote from when I find the email I sent you.
Yeah, well, let's talk Jan LeCun, but before we go there, let's add in a few points to embellish the story that you just told, because it was Ilya Sutskever, who's currently the chief scientist at OpenAI. So
maybe you may have resigned.
Yeah, I know, but
they asked Sam Altman about it yesterday, and he said, I can't speak to that. You'll have to ask Ilya. And he apparently had growing up in the office.
They've got bad blood. Ilya was the guy who tried to get Sam ousted, and that backfired tremendously.
We don't need that gossip for people.
But Ilya was Geoffrey Hinton's graduate student. And when he learned about the NVIDIA CUDA specific architectures using these graphic processors that could be hooked together in a certain way, he said, I can use that for image processing. And he took the invention that Jan LeCun made back in 1989, which was the convolutional neural network, and he implemented it on tiers of CUDA-based architectures, and he got convolutional neural networks to work at scale for the first time. And he was the guy who first did that let's recognize a cat image to work.
Well, it was him and
I know Alex Krzyzewski. Yes.
It was called AlexNet because it was done by Alex in the laboratory of Professor Geoffrey Hinton at the University of Toronto.
Exactly. You know your stuff better than I do.
In my respect, a long time ago, well, no, because I wasn't doing it then, but what he did a long time ago, or in my respect, he had been teaching at Carnegie Mellon, which was one of the best schools in the world for this. And all the money was coming from the U.S. Department of Defense. That was where you had to go to get your grant.
Yeah.
And he said, I am not going to work on the Department of Defense. I am going to move to Toronto. And because he moved to Toronto, it's one of the 3 or 4 best centers of artificial intelligence in the world. Well, maybe one of the 6 or 7. I got some good stories out of Paris, Shenzhen, and Singapore as well, if we want to go to those.
Okay, well, folks, we only got a couple minutes left on the show, so maybe we can wrap it up with some conclusionary comments from Alianna about where things are going with AGI.
Okay, let's talk about the AGI, artificial general intelligence. I described earlier the 2 different kinds of AI that you saw when you type something into Google. One is the generative AI, where it sort of writes a little summary for you. And the other is that box on the right-hand side of your computer screen where it's accessing its pre-made knowledge graph. Right now, these two mechanisms that Google has, and it's invested billions of dollars and 10 years or more in its knowledge graph, not just computer programs, but lots and lots of people time. Those two mechanisms, the knowledge graph and the generative, don't talk with each other. If they did, we wouldn't be having all these glaring problems, these hallucinations, and other really strange things that we have with generative AI. As soon as we get these two mechanisms to connect, that the stored knowledge, equivalent to having file folders where you go and look things up, and the generative AI, equivalent to having half a dozen assistants who can rummage through all the emails and all the mail and pull together a probabilistic answer. As soon as these two can start to talk to each other, we've got the basis for artificial general intelligence. That's where our research is. And I'm sure other people throughout the world are working on that because that's the breakthrough point. And as soon as we get that, we're going to start having, for example, R2-D2 in our home.
Okay, well, stay tuned. We've been talking with Alianna Maren. Thank you so much, Alianna, for coming on Community and Technology. Really appreciate your knowledge and your contribution to this work.
It's been a pleasure and a lot of fun. Thank you for inviting me here, both Dave and Stuart.
Absolutely. Hope to have you back. This has been Community and Technology on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem, every Wednesday, 5 to 6 p.m. Tune in. You just might learn something. Thanks. Good night.